So, welcome today to our webinar about policy management in Microsoft 365. We're basing this webinar on our Policy Express solution, but you can use these for ideas, maybe for your own solution as well. We're using the Microsoft 365 out-of-the-box tools with some low-code automation behind the scenes. I'm joined today with my colleague Ben. Hi, Ben.
Hello again.
Hey. So, Ben, who's this for, and what are they going to get away from today?
So really, this is for anyone that's in an operations role or head of quality governance, and of course, perhaps in a smaller organization, maybe a CIO or IT director, where you've been tasked with finding a solution for this. In terms of takeaways, we're going to highlight the 6 steps to successful policy management and really showcase the value in using the platform that you already have. If you're already invested in SharePoint, how can you do that using the tools you already have?
Perfect. Okay, so I think let's start by talking about those 6 steps, and then we'll dive into the demos. So, first step of a policy lifecycle is creation. For many organizations who we work with, the policies may already exist. They could be scattered across the organization. They might not be in a consistent format. So, often it's about standardizing those policies, but also bring them under one roof. So that's the first piece, and we're going to do that in a second. The second piece is once you've created a policy, you'll then look to put it through an approval process. Typically, that's a subject matter expert does maybe a first level approval, and then a second level approval could be either a head of department or a head of quality. And we'll take you through that process too. Once we've approved our policy, we then want to make it accessible to the rest of the organization. So we talk about how we publish it, but also how we make that accessible to people, either because they're looking for that information or B, because they need to be made aware of that information. There's going to be examples where when that policy is published, that you want people to acknowledge or attest that they understand and agree to the policy, and you'll want to create a record for that. So historically, you might have given a piece of paper to sign. We're going to show you how we can do that using the Microsoft platform and create that audit trail as well. Now, over time, it's going to be feedback, and there could be different scenarios. Feedback could be on one side, could be a non-conformance feedback where you're looking to record, look, this is where the policy hasn't been followed, and we need to create a log of that. Or on the other side, it might be the policy is not clear or out of date, and you want to feed back to the policy owner in a nice way to say, look, we need to look at this, it's not quite right. So how can we do that feedback capture? And then completing the circle is the review process. So most policies might have maybe a 12 or a 24-month cycle on them, at which point the owner was going to go back and look at that policy. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at how feedback falls into that. But we're also going to see, well, what happens if the owner leaves the organization? How can we highlight policies which have fallen out of, should we say, control? And we need to find a new owner for those policies. So what's the right way to do that? So that's the policy lifecycle. Right in the middle, we've got monitor. So this is that piece which is there's like a big picture view. Maybe it's your KPIs, your metrics, something where you can report on the high level of how is the solution being used? Have people acknowledged their policies? Have we got a blockage in terms of people not approving policies? So we're going to show you that as well. So that's the policy lifecycle, Ben. Where's the best place to start?
Yeah, so I think let's start at the beginning. We're going to start with creation. So Rupert, if you wouldn't mind firing up our demo environment. We've come to our effectively what would be a company portal, intranet portal. If you wouldn't mind just clicking on the policies link. We'll go into a bit more detail around this a little bit later, but effectively this is where all of the policies are going to be maintained. And Rupert, if you wouldn't mind just on the Policy Hub administration, just very quickly, can you click into the masters area? Just 2 seconds. So this is effectively where we keep all of the original format, Word format copies of these documents before they get published for everyone else. Now, in order to create a document here, what we're actually going to do is fire up Word. So if you wouldn't mind just firing up Microsoft Word, please, Rupert, that'd be great. Perfect. So again, I mean, we're already in the right screen, which is fantastic. But what we're using here is the published templates mechanism within SharePoint called Organizational Asset Libraries. And we're able to go and load the template directly from Word and start working on it. So we're going to click on that policy template. We can see within here, we've got some high level headings that we'll go through and we'll fill out. And we've also got a very simple control block that appears at the top. So you might have things like the document reference number, the type, the department. You might have things like who it was issued by, who approved it, etc. And we can see that those parts, as Rupert's tapping away, we can see that that control block is going to be populated by information that's passed in through the system. Now, this is great, but realistically, before we do anything else, we're going to have to save this document somewhere. So we're going to save it into the masters area. So if we just click File, that's it, Save As. We're just going to go and open up the site's location, and we're just using Word to navigate straight into the SharePoint library. We're going to save it into the document masters area and give it a name. Okay. So Rupert saved that. Couple of things that we'll notice straight away. So the auto save function has literally just switched itself on. If you click on the title as well, we can now see that the ability to change the file name, the ability to access version history. So if we click on the version history a minute, that is now become available. So just by saving it into SharePoint natively, suddenly that has activated that key functionality. Any changes as we go through drafting, the document will appear in the version history and we'll be able to refer back to them if we need to. The other thing that is worth drawing attention to is now that we've saved this into SharePoint, we have visibility of the SharePoint metadata. So if you could click on the View tab, please, and then we're going to go to the SharePoint Properties pane on the right-hand side. So what we've got is a cut down set of metadata that's going to be relevant for this part of working on the document. So we've put a title in, we've got things like department and type, and we're actually going to go and fill this out in a minute using the online version. But the idea is that you could either do that using SharePoint natively, or actually those properties are available to you directly within Word itself. So let's shut this document down, Rupert, and we're going to go into the document masters area again. So we can see that that document has just appeared at the very top. So we've got this ordered by most recently created. We can see it's just been created, and we're going to go and fill in that information, so that additional metadata from the details pane. So yeah, let's go ahead and click that. If you wouldn't mind just clicking the edit all button there. So we can see Rupert already populated the title when we were in the property pane inside Word itself. And we're just going to go and fill out some of this additional metadata. There's no reason why we have to do this online. We could have done this in the native experience, but it just gives you a bit of a flavor of the different approaches. So if you just do a type ahead, that's it. So with those tags that we just assigned, we can either pick them or we can just type ahead to pick from the list of what's available already. Let's say that I wanted to go and add in a keyword. I can go and do that. So we can see from a list of existing keywords that we have created, and we could pick from those. If I wanted to add a new one, if you just hover it, that's it. So we're going to go and click on new term. So if you could perhaps call that charity, for instance, and just press the enter key, please. There we go, and just apply. So what we've effectively done is just go and create a new keyword that other people can use, and then that has become reusable and will be tagged to the document itself. So we've got some metadata assigned. We now need to think about who is going to be responsible for this document. So we need to set an owner. So if we just set that to our demo account, which is Megan. And what this is going to do is this person is going to be the person that receives notifications 2 years down the line when this document needs to be reviewed. So it's quite important to set that. So the final thing we can see is that all of these other documents have a document number. So we've built a mechanism that allows an automatic incremental number to be assigned to these documents. It's based on populating the department and the type, and sometimes takes a few minutes. So what we're going to do, we're going to summarize what we've shown you so far, and then we'll just jump back to that, and we should hopefully see that that number has been filled in.
So that was stage one creation. We started with a template. And I think what's nice about the templates is a couple of things. A, they can go through the same approval process you see later. So you make sure that templates have also been formally vetted maybe once by marketing and then maybe to an overall quality controller. So we started in Word as well, which is a comfortable place for many of us, rather than SharePoint, and we save directly into SharePoint. And the second bit you just saw towards the end there, we started to tag and categorize. And that's going to be really important down the line when it comes to search. So when we want to surface information up. The unique reference number, so that's based on a business rule that's being generated behind the scenes now. So that's a job which happens every so often, and it will scan for any documents without a unique reference number and assign one based on the business rules agreed. And then finally, because we're using SharePoint Online, we've got all the collaboration powers of SharePoint. So whether that's bringing other people into a document to work on it, or in the case that we demonstrated, which was version control. So then we've created it. I'm guessing the next stage is that somebody needs to approve this.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just go back into the demo again and pick up from where we left. So actually, let's just do a quick refresh actually, because we may be lucky and see the numbers come in. There we go. Yeah, so that document numbers come in, which is perfect. As I say, takes a couple of minutes sometimes. So we've worked on our document, we've drafted it. We may have used SharePoint to collaborate and share and get some reviews. Now what we're going to do is take it through an approval process. So typically there will be a two-stage approval process. The first is where you submit a document to a subject matter expert. Perhaps you work in HR and you're going to submit it to the head of HR for their review. And then the second stage is where it goes to perhaps a head of quality or governance or compliance. Maybe it's someone that manages your ISO accreditations, for instance, and they will do those final checks and balances. And once that has been done, it will be converted into PDF and published into a location for everyone else to access. So Rupert, if you wouldn't mind clicking on the three dots, we're using Power Automate to do this approval. So if you click on that, we'll just give that a second to wake up. There we go. So we can see our Policy Hub request first approval. So this is where we get the option to choose who this is going to go to. The rationale around this is that you as an individual will know who should be approving a document, and you'll know if some person is off sick or long-term sick leave or on vacation. So the idea is you can choose who this is going to go to, but what we've configured is a mapping that says these people can approve HR documents, these people can approve marketing. So you just go in and pick the person that you know you need to send to. You're not worried about the system tying things in. So that's it. Let's go and do that. We're going to send it to our colleague Diego and just run that.
Okay, so Ben, why that's whirring in the background, it's also interesting when we see this document number here, it's been comprised based on information that's been completed in other fields. So
That's
you can
right.
see this one here. We've got MK for marketing, T for templates, and 01 and 02 also being the numbers of those documents. So it's quite clever the way that the actual document number means something as well, rather than just a number in itself.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you'd end up embedding into the document control block. So Rupert, would you mind popping over to our friendly colleague Diego?
Okay.
Now, what's going to happen is, so we've submitted this approval to Diego, and Diego is going to receive it in multiple ways. So using the out-of-the-box Power Automate workflows, this will send an approval request to Microsoft Teams, and it will send it to email. For some reason, the Teams request tends to come in first. So we're going to check that. And in fact, that's actually, yeah, that's already come through. And then typically what we'll see fairly shortly is the email request come through, and we'll see what that looks like in a second. So we can see this document, the request for charity work has come in. We've got some instructions. I can either approve it to send on to the next stage, or I can reject it. You could click on the link and open it. We're not going to do that because we were just looking at it. So you could click on the link and open it, or you can just apply the action and fill in some comments. So let's go and approve this and move it on to the next stage, Rupert.
Okay. I'm just seeing if it's come through in our email yet.
That's a
Here we
good
go.
point.
Charity
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
So exactly, it's actually come through in both locations. So it gives you that option. If you spend more time in email, then you might want to use that. But let's say you accidentally deleted the email, it's still easy for you to get back and see those approvals within Microsoft Teams. So since we've got the email open, why don't we do it from here, actually?
Now, not many people may have seen this, but I'm actually interacting with the email itself rather than going off to another web page to review it. So maybe I've already gone through the document with Megan and I'm comfortable with it. So I can actually work within the email. What I really like about this is the way that the email then updates. So if I then come back to this email, I can actually see that I actually did this work. Often I go back to it and say, did I do that thing again? Oh, I did. I can see I did it at the time I did it. And so I've then got that record from my email if I choose to. And I'm guessing, Ben, that will also reflect in here in Microsoft Teams as well.
Yeah, exactly. So if you just do a quick, so if you go back, you should see that refresh. There we go. So we can now see that top request there. It's got a status approved. It's already been approved effectively. So yeah, if you were to go and click into it, Rupert, actually, why not? We'll have a quick look and you can see the history around that. Yeah. So it was requested by Megan. Diego has responded. So regardless of which path you use, both the equivalent, the alternatives will be updated. So again, if you approved it from Teams, the email would be updated and vice versa.
Excellent.
Let's jump back to Megan, please, if you wouldn't mind.
So here she is.
Yeah, good. So the first thing, let's go and have a look at her email, if you don't mind, please, Rupert. So actually, the first thing we can see is that she's been notified that the document she requested has been approved. Now, as it happens for this demo, Megan is also the person that will do the second stage. So again, we're going to jump to Teams first because it tends to come through to there. So let's just do a look at our activity, please, if you don't mind. There we go. So that should be second stage approval. So we can see again in Teams, it's come through to Teams first. And we now have a couple of slightly different options. So we've got the option to approve it, to reject it, or we've built in an option called temporarily approve. So you may find that some documents should have a 2-year approval life cycle. Some might have a 1-year approval life cycle, for example. So this gives you some opportunity to change what those options are. And we're just going to approve it for the moment. So if you wouldn't mind, Rupert, just going and filling in and doing that final, not that one. That's it. Yeah. Good stuff. So we've submitted that second stage. That's now been approved. As you were doing that, Rupert, I did notice that the new email notification popped up. So if we go back to that, again, we can see that second email, but it takes a split second. And actually, without even doing anything, because we approve this in Teams, it's immediately gone and updated itself in the email there. Okay, so it's just highlighting how both of those actions happen. So we've done the approval. A fairly common thing is that you want to see some level of audit to see what has actually happened in the approval step. So Rupert, do you mind going back to the policy hub?
Sure. Yep.
If you wouldn't mind just scrolling over on the horizontal scroll bar there to the end. Yeah, that's it. So we can see this information has been filled in, which is great. We can see the next review date has been pushed forward by a couple of years. All of that's been updated. If you go right to the very end, if you don't mind, we're going to click on this audit link. So effectively what we're doing here is capturing certain stages of actions as part of our approval process. Now, SharePoint doesn't do this automatically, but this is the kind of thing that you can build as part of your Power Automate workflows. So what we've effectively done is say every time a key step happens, we're going to log this to our audit log SharePoint list with a match based on the document ID, which is what we're seeing here. So when we clicked on that link, it's showing me the filtered series of actions that says, first of all, it was issued, then approved, and then second stage approved. And if you jump over to the right hand side, Rupert, that's okay. Just to prove that we're doing this all for real, you can see that in the created date, these activities happening within the past 5 minutes.
Perfect. Nothing like a live demo.
Absolutely. And then to the proof in the pudding, let's jump over to our published documents area from our administration navigation, please. So that's it. Go to the documents there. And what we'll be able to see, if we scroll down into HR, we can see that new document, charity work, has come through as a PDF. And so actually it's gone through the conversion process and effectively saved it as a PDF and passed all that information in. Now, yes, you can still use SharePoint version control. You don't have to turn things into PDF, but generally people perceive that PDFs are more secure and it feels like a more appropriate place to publish policies.
So what you're saying, Ben, is that process happens automatically once it's approved.
right.
You don't need to go Word, save as, or print to PDF, because we know that's what happens behind the scenes when people do it. So why not automate that process?
Yeah.
And because it's a PDF within the Microsoft ecosystem, it means the content's still indexable by search. So it doesn't mean that information's lost. If you type search in there, it's still going to find that information.
That's right. Exactly. So let's just summarize that, I think.
So what do we look at? The approval process. And the way that we've done this is that we have approver or approvers for each department. And then at the second level, you might have a quality approver or a head of department approver. We reflected that in our multi-level sign-offs. So there was 2 stages in that sign-off process. And then backing all of this is that audit trail. So you've got that evidence of what happened and when. So Ben, we've approved it. I guess the next thing is now that people want to be able to find this policy, or we need to circulate it to them. If they don't know about it, they need to know about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's worth exploring the different ways that people are going to access this. So I think the first thing, if we jump back to the policy hub itself, for those people, let's go to the homepage. So the homepage of the policy hub is actually is a search experience. So for those people that know that policies are there and they just want to come and find it, they can come here and they can search for leave, for instance. That's going to get them a set of policies back. And then, much like using Amazon to search for something, you can filter down to narrow down the results. So you might want to narrow by keyword, department, et cetera, to narrow down into what it is that you're looking for. And actually, just a quick aside, what we do often find is that people that have things like very large employee handbooks that have got everything, we recommend chopping it down into the individual policies so it becomes much more easy to search for things. So that's the search experience. The next thing, though, is how you communicate it. So one potential way is that you might actually post a news story on your intranet and communicate it out to everyone. So Rupert's come to the homepage of our SharePoint intranet here. We can see that there's a news story there launching our whistleblowing policy. So let's go and click into that news article. So what this gives you an opportunity to do is create some context as to why or what or who to ask or what to follow up on. So we've created that context and put that content in, and then we've shown the related documents which are stored within the policy hub, and that's been embedded in our news policy article. So that's the next way. The third way is that we can create almost just static resource pages for our policy. So if we were to go into expand on the Intranet Hub there and look at new joiners, for instance, what we've done here is we've created a page for new joiners that gives them a big overview of everything about starting their journey with, in our case, Information EXP. But what this also does is bring together some of those policies into a central place. So they're not having to go and search for things. They've been curated and compiled into a page that everyone else can access. But we're not copying things. We're not having to save copies of these policies. It's all still referring to those live updated versions as they get published. So we can see that coming through.
I think what's
And
nice about that,
go on.
Ben, is that if we add new policies down the line or remove one of these, this is going to update automatically as long as you tag it maybe with week one reading.
That's
So we've got
right.
that single version of the truth, but also you don't need to come back to this page to update it because it's going to happen automatically.
Yeah, so we actually use those keywords. We use we use some custom keywords, and we could put things like new joiner as a keyword and have that be one of the mechanisms to filter what comes through on here.
Great.
And then the final way is that you can effectively pre-can a search. So if we had a look at absence and leave, what we've effectively done in our navigation is take people to a specific search results page. It's taken people to the policy hub, but pre-populated the search terms instead of having to go and create a whole dedicated page for it. So let's just summarize where we've got to on that, I think.
Perfect. So findability, as I call this, or publishing of the policies. So prior to this stage, we've already published it as a PDF, but now it's time to find it again. And so there's that news piece where we're showing people information they might not be aware of, and we can put that A on the internet, but B, you can then use the tools within SharePoint to create a news digest to push that out into people's individual inboxes. Ben showed us towards the end there the absence and leave example within the navigation, so how we can use navigation to drive to policies or a policy. Then there was the new joiner scenario, so that's what we'd call a page, as I call an evergreen page. You can create it once and it will update itself. And then if we go right back to the beginning of that segment, we looked at the search piece. So we talk about this Amazon.com type search experience where we've got both words, but we can also use the filters or the refiners on the left-hand side. Now, Ben, that's great, but there's going to be scenarios where people are going to need to acknowledge or attest that they have seen and understood and agreed to a policy. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes just simply publishing a policy isn't enough. You actually need, from a compliance perspective, to get people to acknowledge it. So if we jump back to our environment, please, what we're going to go to now is go into the main published documents area, and we're going to take our charity policy, charity work, which is a bit further down, just near that's it, and we're going to submit this for acknowledgement. So if you just right click on that automate. So again, we're using the Power Automate functionality to do this. And if you just click on that. So what this is going to do is ask us to say, who do we need to acknowledge it? So we can put in individuals, which is useful, but actually, I'll just let you put the due date in there quickly. But actually, yeah, okay. But actually what you may need to do is send this to a group of people. So just for the webinar, we're just going to send it to an individual, but you can send this to groups of people. You can't send it to distribution lists. They do need to be either things like Microsoft 365 groups or email enabled security groups, for instance. But the idea is it will go and send it to that group, and expand out so each member of that group will get their record that they can sign. Now, when this comes out, it's going to send an email out. Now, we're not going to sit and wait for that email to come through for the purpose of the webinar. So we can just access it from this link here. So effectively, what will happen is when the email goes out, each individual will receive a link to take them to the document acknowledgement screen here. So what we've done with this, again, for the more technical people, we've built this application using Power Apps. So this is a little bit more customized perhaps than just using SharePoint out of the box, but it means we can bring that document into the page and actually present it. We can see the list of policies that have been assigned to the individual. And in time, what we'd actually see is that charity work policy come through as well. And then the user can go browse through it and then tick that button at the bottom that says, I acknowledge that I've read and understood, which will then get collated and reported on. Okay. So as we do that, we're going to click on that and it'll go and load the next one as well. So it's automatically done that for us. And in fact, actually, literally as we did that, the charity work one came in. So yeah, again, it's definitely real. So good. So we've acknowledged our policy, which is great. Let's just jump back to the home page a minute.
Yeah, and I think I've just summarized that here. So we've got a little email here telling us what we've been asked to do, and that would take us straight through. So, as you say, Ben, back to the deck, and that was a quick section, but we're going to come on to acknowledgement. So there's obviously bits which need to happen before you send something out for acknowledgement. There might be training required, there might be some testing, maybe you use Microsoft Forms to do that. But ultimately, the bit that we're helping here with is the actual record of someone saying, yeah, I've agreed to this. Often when you join a company, you might be asked to sign the employee handbook, but then over time, parts of that are going to get outdated. So rather than sign the whole 50-page document, you can just send that individual part of that document out for update, which means that people are focusing on what's changed rather than signing everything. And as I said, we're going to come back to the reporting side of that further down the line. But then policies out there, naturally over time, people are going to want to feed back on that, either because they think that the policies may be missing something, is factually incorrect, or because maybe regulations have changed, or they want to use this as a method for maybe recording non-conformance. So how can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump back to the demo again, please.
Okay.
So yeah, let's just go back to the homepage if I don't mind. So we've got a couple of different places where we can do this. We've, again, similar to the acknowledgement application, we've implemented a feedback application. So the first thing is that we could access it directly from the search results here. So you can see the give feedback button. It doesn't matter which approach you take. We're going to go into the documents area and just show it there as well. So if you don't mind going to the documents list, some people prefer to see a big list of documents. Others may just want a search experience. So again, let's go to our charity work document that we created earlier. So we're going to click on that feedback button, which takes us to a similar experience to what we saw before, which is effectively that document, the ability to fill in some information about it, to view the document in line.
So I put my feedback in.
Okay, good stuff.
So Ben, obviously I'm on a laptop today. Can this work on a tablet, for example?
Yeah, so this Power App has been designed to support tablet view, which is why you can see the preview of the document itself. So this would natively work on a tablet. You'd be able to open it in the Power Apps application. And again, that would give the opportunity, for instance, if you needed to take a photo of some evidence of non-conformity, then you could take that photo and actually go and upload it into the attachments box there as well. If you wanted to do this on a mobile, then realistically it would be a slightly adapted version of this that doesn't show the document preview that can work on the mobile form factor.
So you'd be looking at sort of this left-hand third of the screen.
That's right.
Okay,
Exactly.
but that's probably enough, though, if you know that, maybe it is a security policy and someone's breached it, not locked the door or something. You just need to know you're in the right policy before you take your evidence.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's feedback. So we talked about feedback. Feedback can be driven by a number of areas. We talked about business changes. Potentially the policy's not been written in such a way that it doesn't answer every scenario, so the clarifications, non-conformities and capturing evidence of that. And maybe it's regulatory changes that need to be incorporated into that document. So that's feedback, Ben. When we get to the end of that cycle, though, we still need to do this review process. And the review process is, let's take in that feedback. Let's see what's expiring. Let's look at those documents. So how do we go about the review process?
Yeah, so there's a few things here that we're going to cover. I think the first thing we'll do is have a look at where the feedback gets submitted. So let's just go and take a quick look at that, if you don't mind. Just fire up the demo again. So we'll just come out of this screen. If you go into the admin link again, please, if you don't mind, we're going to go into feedback, which is in the monitoring section. And what we can see here is all of the different documents that have feedback have been submitted. We can see the feedback where it comes in. We can see that those documents have got owners assigned. And if you are an owner of a document, you will then receive that notification. But all of this information is being aggregated into this central view here. In fact, Rupert, if you were to just pop open the mail client a second, yeah, so that's it. So we click on that link there. We can see because Megan was assigned as an owner of a particular document, she's received the feedback that Rupert just submitted. So she can see the message that was included, and she's got a link to be able to click on either the published version of the document or to go and actually open the master version of the document so she can go and make the change straight away. So all of that is pushed in there. So that's how we handle feedback and reporting on that.
And I'm guessing, Ben, obviously we've created this view of all feedback, but we can set it in such a way that you only see the feedback related to you. So I'm not getting all that noise.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Rupert, if you were to click where it says all items on the sort of right-hand side of your screen,
Yes.
there we go. If you click that and change that to my feedback, then you'll see only the items where you've been assigned as the owner. So exactly. So you can effectively direct people to see an aggregated view of your feedback as opposed to other people's.
Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So the next two things that we need to cover, I think since we're already in the admin area itself, one of the scenarios that we need to consider is when someone leaves an organization. So if you've got owners that have left, there's no way of necessarily detecting that unless you use a mechanism using Power Automate that we've done here. So if you click on the orphaned policies link, what we've effectively done here is we're periodically checking every single document and we're interrogating every user that's been assigned as an owner of that document. So the first thing we can see is that there's a document that doesn't actually have an owner assigned. So it's flagging that up to us to say someone needs to take ownership of this. The next view that we have is flagging up owners who don't have a Microsoft 365 license assigned. So again, perhaps they've left and their license has been recovered, or they shouldn't really have been added. They were a temporary user or contractor or something along those lines. And then the final scenario at the bottom, which is probably more likely actually, is that the owner has been deactivated. So again, they've left the organization and their Microsoft 365 account has been disabled. And this is flagging up that they were an owner of a document. They are no longer part of the organization. You need to go and take ownership of that document and assign it to someone else. Okay, so this is something that will periodically go and interrogate and see what's going on and report to the solution owners. And then the final thing, which is probably more relevant, is when these documents are reaching their 2-year expiry date, how do we notify the owners that which documents they need to be dealing with? So if you go to your mail client a minute, please, Rupert, we can see that we flagged a mail earlier, which is an example near the bottom. There we go, in yellow with the little flag on it. That's the one. Yeah, so maybe just pop that open. It doesn't quite render properly. Yeah, there we go. So what we've effectively done is highlighting how effectively as we approach the expiry of a document, let's say 3 months away, we've got some documents that need to be reviewed. We'll send an email to each owner, but instead of sending an email for every document, which could be a bit overwhelming, we send an aggregated view for a given owner of the documents that they're responsible for. So each owner should only receive one email when this gets sent out. So we can see Megan is responsible for these 5 or 6 documents here, when they're expiring, how to go and access them and how to go and update them. So that will go through on a scheduled basis. So typically it might be 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, et cetera, and then if they're overdue.
Perfect.
So I think time for a quick summary.
I think so. So review piece, obviously some people might just do it because they get the notifications in their inbox. And what we're seeing in front of us is probably more the escalation areas. So the first area being the policies which potentially have expired or expiring, you're going to get that notification. But also the administrator or overall owner is going to get that report as well. So we're going to approach from 2 routes. The second piece is we talked about orphan policies, a policy which has an owner, which has either left the organization, hasn't got a license, or simply a policy where the owner's been removed for whatever reason. And then the final piece is that feedback. So how do we incorporate that feedback into our policy? So Ben, I think that completes the circle, because at which point we're then back at the beginning phase again, which is updating that policy and sending it through the approval process. But I imagine there's certain things that a policy administrator will want to review and monitor from a distance. So what can we do about that?
Yeah, so if you're someone that perhaps just wants a more overarching high level view of what's going on, if you jump back to our demo again, so what we're going to do, click on the navigation pane. We're going to go and have a look at the Policy Hub dashboard. So the idea around this is it's a Power BI report that has been written that queries the status of all of the documents within the system. And the idea is it's giving you a bird's eye view of the documents based on their approval stages. So are there documents that are draft? Are there documents that are stuck at a particular stage? So you can go and narrow down on them, for instance. It also gives you some visibility of the documents grouped by different departments or owners or type. And again, we can see on the bottom right, we can see any documents who are actually currently overdue. The other thing that we can see is how many documents have been issued for acknowledgement, but haven't had those acknowledgements completed as well. So let's take a quick look at the HR documents. So using the second pie chart along from the left, we're going to click in, because this is Power BI, we can click in and filter and then drill through into a page where we can see some of that detail.
What I like, Ben,
So
when I clicked on that is it updated the numbers on the right-hand side here to reflect the numbers impacted by HR. So
yeah,
it's pretty smart.
absolutely. So that's all built within Power BI if you're familiar already or not. So we've selected the HR documents in the dashboard, and then we've drilled through to see those individual documents. So we can go and see who are those documents, when were they approved by, and then we could go and find out who owns them, for instance. So Rupert, if I were to click on the health and safety policy, for example, what I will see is that because the bottom document owners section has updated itself, that's owned by Megan. Okay. If I click on the bottom right section, the little orange box, okay, then it will show me all of the documents that are owned by Megan versus the documents owned by Diego, for instance. Okay. So again, as you click on these different interactive visuals on the chart, it will go and apply filters elsewhere. The final thing we're going to take a quick look at is the document acknowledgement status. So if you click on the tab along the bottom there, again, we can see there are 3 documents that have been issued for acknowledgement that haven't been completed. So we can see the ones that have a status of pending or overdue. So that's effectively telling us which documents have been completed, which are overdue or not. Rupert, if you click in the middle pie chart, if you click on the overdue status, for instance, so that's telling me that the health and safety policy is overdue. If you click on pending, okay, so again, it's telling me that there are 2 documents, the email and internet usage policy. One's been assigned to Diego, the other's been assigned to Megan, and then the anti-corruption bribery policy. So again, we can see which documents have been issued and which individuals need to come back and actually acknowledge them.
That's great. So we know who to chase, basically.
Exactly that.
I mean, from our experience, people tell me it's not who's acknowledged I'm worried about, it's those who haven't. And that's obviously
That's
what
right.
this is enabling you to do. Okay,
Exactly
but
that.
so any more on the dashboard, or do you think that brings us up to
No,
closing that piece?
that's it. Yeah, exactly. So that's everything. Time for another summary.
So that's the monitoring piece. We'll look at the overall health of the policy management. We looked into acknowledgements, and particularly of those who haven't, and getting the reporting on that using that Power BI chart. And then also monitoring the approval status there. So in that dashboard, we had those pie charts, which very smartly, by clicking in one area, would update the rest of the data within that. So that completes the story on policy management. I just want to highlight what you've seen there today. So the first step was around creation. We looked at templates. We've got the collaboration features enabled there, so we can bring other people into building those documents with us. The unique numbering happened automatically, and the version control is part of SharePoint and happens behind the scenes. The approval process happened. We've driven by workflow, but supported by audit as well. We then published it and showed you the different ways that we can surface that information through evergreen articles, news, through navigation using pre-canned searches, and the search experience itself. There's the acknowledgement piece there. So we showed how you could push a policy out to either a group of people or to an individual person who could then see it through the Power App, but also get that email notification that it's happening. The feedback piece we talked about with different kinds of feedback and the ability to both use it on a tablet as well as a laptop or PC, and how we capture that feedback and what happens to that feedback. And I think, it's a great opportunity to capture that non-conformity in the context of what is the policy. And then the final couple of pieces here, the review stage. So in particular, we dived into expiring policies, we dived into orphaned policies, and also making sure that feedback feeds back into that review process. And then sitting across for everything is the monitoring or the Power BI dashboard, as you saw there. So giving the metrics for numbers, maybe the things which go up to that board level meeting as a one pager. So that's really what we wanted to share today with you. I think there's three things you can do with this information. Number one, on the left-hand side, you can take these ideas and maybe develop your own solution and using the bits which are relevant to you to give you a view. This has taken months of work to get that far, so it's not going to be a small thing, but maybe not everything is relevant to you. The second option is if you like everything that you see today, we offer this as a package solution if this meets how your business requirements are. And we have a fixed fee to deliver this. It's not a subscription, it's a one-time fee, and the fees are on our website for that. And we will sit with you and do a workshop to make sure the requirements are a good fit. We will deploy it to your tenant, we'll configure it based on those requirements, and then we'll deliver the training as well to get you up and running. And if you do want support, we can provide optional support. And then the final option is that was great, but we work differently or we're more complicated. Maybe you're in multiple jurisdictions, you have multiple divisions, or you have unique needs. So we can look at more of a bespoke approach. And with that, we start with a workshop. So if either of the options on the right or in the middle are useful to you, then go to our website. And as you can see on the top right, we have pricing. We're really open. I think we're quite rare in this space that we do this, but we're really open about what things cost in the world of SharePoint. So do dive in and have a look at that. And there's a chat box in the bottom right, which will connect you with me, Rupert. So that brings the webinar to a close. But if you do have any questions, please do drop them in, and Ben and myself will do our best to answer those.
So no questions at the moment, but we do often get asked questions about if there's any kind of particular type of licensing that's required. So we've built this so that it is supported by what we think of as the standard licensing that you get within Microsoft 365. So that is either Microsoft 365 E1 or Microsoft 365 Business Standard. So you don't need additional Power Apps licensing or Power Automate or anything else to make this work. All of this is within standard. The exception to that is if you want to use Power BI. So you can use Power BI for free if you want the individual dashboard for yourself. But if you want to publish it on the page so other people can view it, then it would require people to have the Power BI Pro licenses or as part of the Microsoft 365 E5 offering.
Okay. And I think just worth noticing in terms of experience of this, we've delivered this both from financial organizations to charities. So it sits across a broad range of organizations. And the other thing, yes, we are based in the UK, but we have clients who have come across us because of this solution. And we have clients from Seattle to closer to home. So as long as we can find some overlap in our time zone or even stretch it slightly when we go to Pacific time, we're happy to help support you on your journey with policy management. Otherwise, if there's nothing else, Ben, we should call it a day.
Yeah, all good.
Okay, well, thank you for your time today. Otherwise, thank you very much.